So our first bill up is from Representative Baker, House File 1242. And if you want to move forward and set yourself up. And if you,
Thank you, Madam
if
Chair.
your testifiers are all set to go?
Yes.
Excellent. All right.
And thank you, Madam Chair and members. Before I forget to, I do have an amendment. I think that was introduced as well, just to update the dates. I want to make sure we get this as amended.
All right. Well, we will first get the bill before us. Representative Bakeford, I believe you're a co-author on this amendment. So would you like to move this, or if you're a co-author on the bill, would you like to move the bill before us, House File 1242?
So moved, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you, Representative Bakeford. And I understand then, Representative Baker, that you'd like to move the amendment and adopt the amendment, so the bill's in the order that you would like to present it to the committee. All right. So then, again, I will turn to Representative Baker. We have the amendment, which is coded A1. And Representative Baker, would you? At some point, I'm going to get Baker and Baker.
Backers in there
So
too.
far, I think I'm okay. Representative Bakeberg, would you please move the A1 amendment?
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. My understanding, this is just to get the bill in the order that the representative would like it to be presented. All in favor of the A1 amendment, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the A1 amendment is adopted. All right. So your bill is before you in the order that's before us in the order that you would like it. Representative Baker, please introduce yourself to the committee and proceed.
Madam Chair, thank you so much. Representative Dave Baker from the Candiway County area. And it's been a big dream of mine to get it in front of your committee, Madam Chair. So thank you for allowing this to happen, and your CA and the members here. I want to have a conversation about flexible learning in schools around Minnesota. I have had the opportunity to live in West Central Minnesota, where we actually have 3 school districts around me, and I have a little piece of it in my county that has really enjoyed the ability to have some flexible learning. Each time I talk to their superintendents, I find more and more that there's some uniquenesses to again, in this case, a 5-day school week or a 4-day school week. Others use different flexibility for different things. I'm excited about this, and I think that we need to bring this to a larger scale. If others think this is right for them, this bill simply just brings it to the local school boards for the decision and the process that it takes to consider this for their school district. So again, I have seen test scores, I've seen parents' reactions, I've seen students over my 10 years that I've been here in the state. I first got involved when I was helping one of the schools reapply for their 3-year application, and they were very concerned about losing that. So that's where I learned deeply about this about 8 years ago. Today, Madam Chair, I'd like to bring up Gina Lilleberg, who will be our first testifier, and then Pat Walsh, and then we also have somebody online. I just want to say that I'm looking forward to some great conversations today. This is a idea that is not new. The school districts in my area have been doing it for a number of years, and it's well piloted. Come on up. Yep. And I think that what we can do is just listen to the professionals and hear others, and I'm just really, again, grateful to have this conversation. So thank you for that, and I'll set this step aside. Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for that introduction. And Ms. Lilleberg, could you introduce yourself for the record?
Yes.
And proceed.
Yes, thank you, committee. My name is Gina Lilleberg, and I'm the chair of the Atwater Cosmos Grove City School District. I'm also a parent of 4 students who have gone through ACGC under a flexible learning year. ACGC was a school district in statutory operating debt when I was elected to the school board in 2008. We made the decision to move to a flexible learning year in 2010, 2011 was our first year. We made that decision by, I'll be honest, we had no choice but to look at ways to cut costs. And as we looked at other schools around the country who had embraced this 4-day school week plan, we found some in Arizona, Utah, and Colorado who have been on a 4-day school week since the oil embargo of the 1970s. While they originally moved to that model, cost savings is not what kept them there. And as they talked about those intangibles, those are some of the same things that we have seen manifested in our school district. So I would like to highlight what we did to work with our local community to address their concerns, but also to ensure now that they're solidly behind it, how do we revisit that conversation with them on a regular basis? I also have recently finished my term on the Minnesota School Board Association as a director for Southwest Minnesota. And we take very seriously at the School Board Association training our local school districts to get that community feedback, to make sure that we are embracing the vision and voice of our local community. In the 4-day school week, we survey our stakeholders on a regular basis. That includes not only our parents, students, and staff, but our community as well. We revisit our strategic plan on a regular basis, and that's at least in every 5-year process. 4-day is now part of ACGC's identity. And it is something that I've had parents tell me that if you take this away from us, we will riot in your front yard. We use our Mondays in a number of different ways. We offer credit recovery. We offer professional development, 9 full days of staff development throughout the school year, where we're not only able to do it within our own district, but because other 4-day school weeks are so closely in proximity, we offer that in collaboration with them. I had the privilege to attend one of those professional development days in January, and I was thoroughly impressed with the caliber of speakers that they brought in and the breakout sessions that our staff was allowed to attend. It was on par with some of the trainings I've received as a school board member on a national and state level. It was very impressive, and I'm just thrilled to be able to offer that to our staff and local districts around us. I would be happy to answer any questions you guys may have. Like I said, we've been doing this for a long time, and I'm just thoroughly impressed with the results and the satisfaction that our community has with a 4-day school week.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony.
You bet.
I think if you can stay on hand,
Yep.
we'll go through the other testifiers and public testifiers and then return. And I think members will have questions, take notes, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair Pryor.
All right, and I believe Mr. Walsh, Superintendent Walsh, you're up next.
My name is Patrick Walsh. I'm the superintendent at Belgrade Bruton El Rosa School District. It's in southwest Stearns County, Candy, Ojai County, and Pope County. We border all 3 of them. Our district is 350 square miles. We have some students that are basically on a bus for an hour and a half to get to school. So we have this remote aspect of our district that you need to be aware of. The 4-day week began at BBE School District in 2011. I was the principal in Hutchinson at the time, but I am familiar with the schools around this area that it began it. Many of our parents now were students in a 4-day week, and our current senior class, they've never actually went to a traditional 5-day week schedule, never. Initially, I talked to the superintendent, Matt Bullard. He's out in California now, about his initial application in 2010. And these were the reasons why BBE went to the 4-day week. They wanted to maintain a vibrant high school, and they were in deep cuts through the 2000s. They needed to save some money. They wanted to improve their student attendance, and they thought it was an avenue to increase some of the stakeholder satisfaction. Our culture of our district is in the next part, in the core values. You can go to the back one.
Sorry.
Oh, you're going the wrong direction.
I don't know. I was just clicking, sorry.
Okay.
It's not my
I'm sorry.
presentation.
So anyway, where we were at, I was just going
There
to
we
say
go.
it's built into the culture of our school district, and we literally have put it into our core values when it comes to flexible and personalized learning. When it comes to a B through A district, when I say a B through A district, we have 150 kids at least in our school every day, 12 months a year, who are below the age of 5. So the idea that we're a 4-day week is not exactly accurate. We have a daycare where kids are there, 5 days a week, all year long. We have 12 infants that are in a room 25 feet from my office. So it's like we have I think it's 28 toddlers between 16 months and 30 months. So it's a community service district. We are totally part of the fabric of everything we do in our school district. Some unintended benefits of the 4-day week. Where are we now? Right there. These are current assessment of results. The coursework, we've been able to maintain that at the high school. Our cost savings, quite honestly, is right where the national average, when they've studied it, it's about 5% of your budget. And you think of 5% of your budget over 14 years, that's about $3 million. That's SOD territory. So, I mean, it's managed for us to save a district financially. Improved student attendance. I have found no connection to that in our district. I don't think our attendance has improved. I'm just being honest. It was one of the original goals, and it hasn't proven to fruition. And nationally, that's true too. Stakeholder satisfaction. 95% or more of our people are behind it. We have businesses in our community that don't have. If we're not in school, they're not. The bakery's not open. It's crazy, you know. It's a culture. Our parents. I think the pandemic has actually cemented it, because now these flexible learning ideas, it's like people are used to having jobs where they can structure their day around their kids' schedules. And quite honestly, if we were to change it, it would be devastating for our school district. We'd lose teachers, we would lose students. 11 years ago, we were a negative 120 open enrollment district, and now we are more like negative 36 or something like that. If you go out to, Representative Baker's territory, just right south of us, we've got, our school district goes within 2 miles of New London Spicer. And so for a kid who's 4.5 in a family with a 4.5-year-old, they have to make a decision to, bus their kid all the way over to Bruton, which is probably 20 miles, or go 2 miles to New London Spicer. It's hard to win that debate. So again, 12, 13 years ago, we were a negative 120. We're a negative 38 now. The 4-day week or the flexible learning year has a lot to do with that. I did provide you some of the research. Just K12dive.com just had an article last Friday, so that's there. And I'm here to field any questions that you have as well. I won't burden you with the research, but you can read that on your own.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. And I believe our next testifier is on remote, and it's Joe Baumgarten, Principal Researcher, American Institute for Research. And if you can hear us, please unmute, identify yourself for the record, and proceed.
Hi, Education Policy Committee. My name is Joel Baumgarten. I'm the superintendent at Buffalo Lake Hector Stewart. I'm brand new this year. And we have a different approach to this that Pat and some others have, and that's we're looking into this possibility. We currently have a 5-day school week, but it's very intriguing looking at this as a possibility for our small school out in rural Minnesota. We think we can benefit from it. And so we have brought it up to our school board and to our staff, and there's a real interest. Obviously, we would need to go to the community. We would need to, have local control. We would need to do some community meetings, some surveys, and things like that in order to get approval. But I think once people would get to this point of a 4-day week, we would definitely have approval from most people, as Pat just alluded to in his district. Some of the things that are intriguing, I just made a quick list for you. The teacher PD days with the READ Act coming up next year in our 5-day calendar, we have 13 days set aside in order to try to get all of the hours done for our letters training. We could have 1 day per month or so set aside. That would be an automatic. That'd be a great thing for us. The credit recovery idea, bringing that up, students who are failing or need to make up some things, you could bring those kids in during those days. It's an automatic snow makeup day. Last year we had a whole bunch of snow makeup days and virtual days. And virtual days, you can get some stuff out of them, but they aren't the same as being in person. And you can set aside once a month or so during the wintertime those makeup days. We would probably encourage people, especially staff, to miss less time due to appointments, make those appointments on Mondays. College visits for students could happen during that time, and all of the other different things. We also would look into the possibility, being close to ACGC and McRae and some of these BBE, maybe doing some partnerships during those days that we would have off, for things like clubs and special learning assignments and project-based learning, where you could do some upper level learning during that time. We'd look into that. We're also very heavy into the Ag FFA CTE programs, in which those could be huge opportunities for our older students to get out in the community and work with businesses like Lofness and Formafeed and some of the different groups in our area. Many of our kids in high school are working jobs anyway, and they could possibly get some credit for that as well and make connections with our community. We believe that the parents and families many times will adjust schedules. Some people would go to 410s, for example, in order to adjust their schedule. That happens all the time. I honestly believe that grandpas and grandmas and other family members would take advantage of this. They'd go hunting and fishing and doing the stuff that in rural Minnesota is really important to our families. We also, as Pat said, we want to attract staff and students. We're in the same situation in which we have staff come here for a year or two, and then they go to bigger districts to get paid more. Also, students who go to a bigger school for more opportunities, at least that's what they think. And so I think that would be an opportunity to allure those people over to our district. We would be able to, much like Pat stated, to provide affordable daycare. We are creating an early childhood center that's in the process right now. We also, for food purposes, would do some food pack programs and pretty much put some extra food into those as needed for those people that need that. The bus time is a big deal. 20% less time on the bus, which is wasted time for students, is really important. And adding 4 to 5 hours a week to a student's current time, I think you could make up for all of that educational time needed. Of course, we would save money on bus and utilities and things like that, but that's not our number one reason to look into this. We really believe that this could be a good thing for Buffalo Lake Hector Stewart schools. Again, we're currently on the 5-day plan, but in the near future, we are going to research this if we're allowed. And I thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. I think what we'll do is move to the public testimony, and so we'll have you move to this side if you're, but stay close by. We appreciate. And first up, we have Mr. Dosh Uni from the Department of Education, and then on standby, Caitlin Snyder from Education Minnesota.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, committee members. My name is Adosh Uni. I'm the Director of Government Relations for the Minnesota Department of Education, and appreciate the opportunity here to provide some comments on this proposal around 4-day week. Really appreciate the opportunity to connect with Representative Baker. He reached out to the department to kind of hear what our thoughts and possible concerns were on the bill, and really do appreciate that outreach and a really productive conversation on shared goals around supporting innovation in our districts and charters and really what works well for them. I will just say from the outset, MDE has kind of gone through a journey in the last 8 to 10 years around looking at what districts are capable of and what they're able to do for their local communities. We have a shifting mindset in this space around flexible learning years. And in part, some of that is in light of what districts were able to accomplish during the pandemic. I think they really showed us what they were able to do to come through for their students. And one prime example is that they showed that they could deliver online learning for their students. And one of the first things we did out of the gate was push for making all districts and charters approved online learning providers for their enrolled students, because we recognized that they had the capacity there. We also know that the U of M did a study on the effects of 4-day weeks, and we know that many can be implemented without a negative impact and supporting the academic trajectory that districts are on in some circumstances. Not in all, but in some, right? And that goes to representing what's good for local communities. And I think we've heard from some of the testifiers today the importance of meeting what local community needs and getting community buy-in is there. But I think it should come as no surprise for many on the committee that when there are proposals about removing MDE completely or wholly from a process, it does give us pause. And I think there are legitimate concerns we have about that process, and we want to approach this proposal and the next discussions in kind of a measured collaborative, through a measured collaborative lens. Our approval process that we have right now does require a consideration and a conversation around a range of issues and impacts that come from that. And the goal is to maintain a consistent statewide expectation around some of these services and access to resources that we provide for our students and families and educators. Just a few examples are access to meals on non-instructional days, access for school care or school age-based care, and then how do families find child care on that extra day, and what type of pressures does that put for the local community. Students who receive special education services, their access to FAPE, especially on those non-instructional days. What impact may those longer school days have on students who do have some of those pressures or maybe are neurodivergent, and those longer days may have some extra impacts on them. And then what are the economic impacts on non-salaried workers who depend on those hourly set schedules? Those are just a few of the considerations that we have in our approval process that we want to make sure continue to be part of the process and why we have that system set up. But I just do want to say, like, as I mentioned, we do have a shifting mindset. In our conversation with Representative Baker, we did make quite clear that we're very open to continuing this conversation through the collaborative lens and to see what we can do to make sure that more communities are able to have models that fit their needs, but based on having something that has a consistent statewide expectation for those protections that I mentioned. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for your testimony. And Ms. Snyder, please introduce yourself and proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. My name is Caitlin Snyder. I am a lobbyist with Education Minnesota. Forgive me, I think it was Superintendent Walsh earlier said that there'd be riots in the streets if they stopped offering 4-day school weeks. And I spoke with a member earlier today in Lake Superior, and he said something very similar. So I am not here to testify against 4-day school weeks, to be very clear. Done. But in the move, in the bill where we're moving away from an MDE approval process, there are a couple of considerations largely outlined by Mr. Uni that I'd like the committee to think about, like nutritional access for our food insecure kids on days where school's not in session, access for special education students, especially kids with higher needs that might not be able to access childcare in the same way. We also argue that a change like this should be something that should be locally negotiated. If we're changing, especially for the non-salaried members of our school staff, if we're changing from a 4-day school week to a 5-day school week, that's going to lead in a loss of employment for our nutritional staff and our school bus drivers. So having a conversation face-to-face is something that we would support. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. All right, we open it now to member discussion. And I see Representative Berdahl.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'd just like to say that I live in the Atwater Cosmos Grove City School District, and so I'm well acquainted with the 4-day school week that they have there and the excellent job that is done. The students perform very well on our standardized test scores. There's not been a loss of learning or anything like that. So I just want to speak highly for the way they are doing things in ACGC and urge support for Representative Baker's bill.
Thank you. Representative Berg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a question. In terms of and maybe this was answered, so I apologize, but will teachers still be compensated for kind of at the same level they are with a 5-day work week going down to a 4?
Madam Chair, that's a great question. I think I know what it is, and I want to get confirmation from a superintendent. Nothing changes with the teacher contracts, their pay. I think the same expectations are there. And I think, again, Mr. Walsh could maybe address, too, some of the early concerns or the initial concerns, which are valid, for the Education Minnesota. And so I think go ahead and have a chair, and then just maybe you can answer that question.
As part of the initial.
Would you please identify
Oh,
yourself again?
Patrick Walsh, BB Superintendent.
Thank
I'm
you.
sorry. As part of the initial plan, we had to keep our old contract. So if you look at our contract, it's still 182 school days in the year. The flexible learning year is driven by a MOU. So we have to re-sign that with our teachers every year. Our contract has not changed at all. The compensation is the same as every other district. We just have to derive the new language around the flexible learning year.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So that's the way it is now. What happens once the contract runs out? What is, in terms of the language in this bill, what would prevent, at some point in time, the school districts not paying their teachers what they've been paying them for a 5-day school week? Is there a guarantee that they will continue to make the same salary once those contracts you're speaking of are no longer active?
Yeah, we've negotiated 7 contracts for 14 years under this arrangement. So there's no poison pill for the 4-day learning week.
And Representative Baker, if you could also address this, the way the bill's written, do you see it speaking to secret contracts and that 4 days equals 5 days in terms of?
Madam Chair, members, here's what I've assured MDE is that if we need to adjust this and have some comfort language in here to make sure those kind of things are handled, we can do that. I just know that with my conversations with our current administrators, they are assuring me the memos of understanding, the contracts have gone well in our areas. The last thing we want to do is to take anything away from a teacher. We are doing this in largely because teachers are really liking this model. Some districts have 5, 6, 7 school buildings, and maybe not all of them have the flexible learning because maybe they do it a little differently with the ALS school or something, so those are just different. But again, I'm very flexible to modifying this how we can all kind of let's walk before we run. I know that there's school districts doing it very successfully, and they did it on their own without sort of us hovering over what they're going to do and how they're going to approach the community. I'm hoping we can keep this very simple, like the bill's drafted, but I'm committing my efforts to the committee, to the chairs, to make sure that we walk through this how you feel comfortable doing this, to allow more schools to be able to apply. Right now, schools can't apply for this anymore, and that's what we want to change.
I do want to add that we had
Mr.
1,456.
Walsh, Mr. Walsh, we have to make sure that when
Gotcha.
someone's speaking that, the record is official about who
Gotcha.
made the statements, and then also that we go through the chair to be recognized before speaking. So that's the habits here and how we do it. So, Mr. Walsh.
Can I say something? Go ahead. It should be noted that we had 1,456 hours that were part of the contract before, and they are maintained in the current contract.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. And do you have maybe another comment from?
Do you have any other comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd
Sure.
just like to add.
Yep, if you can just sit down and identify yourself again, that would be. And we are trying to have this discussion, and since you're here, which
Yeah,
we
thank you.
appreciate your coming and being part of this discussion and being able to hear from folks directly really benefits us. So if you identify yourself again.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes. My name is Gina Lilleberg, ACGC Schools. Our contract is a little bit different in that the first one we did after we went to the 4-day school week did have a memorandum of understanding. After that, we renegotiated contract language, and that was done through the negotiation process, the negotiation committee, and ratified by our teacher union.
Did you, and if I can ask a question just real quickly, how long has your school district been using
we-
this model?
Yep, we've been using this model since the 2010-2011 school year.
Okay, thank you. All right, Representative Weiss.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I have a question out of pure self-interest. As mother, my kids are currently at the age where, like, when they have extra time off, we can leave them home alone. They're safe, but they definitely just sit on devices all day. So it's not like very enriching for them. And I know one of the things that Mr. Uni said was a consideration was like that impact on childcare on that extra day. And so I'm curious, if we were to move to this model, kind of what would that process of analysis look like, and how would things like the childcare impact be taken into account?
And Ms. Lilleberg, it looks like you have an answer.
Yeah, well, thank you, Madam Chair. So Representative Feist, I had 4 children go through the 4-day school week model. For a large majority of that, I was able to be a stay-at-home mom with them. And so ironically, we did chore jar on Mondays, and then we did rewards. And but once they were old enough to be home alone and I returned to the workforce, they would similarly have a reward and benefit system. And so they earned their screen time, and then they also earned bigger rewards, whether that be an outing or car privileges. And so every parent gets to structure it a little bit different for them, and we get to be creative. I was fortunate in that my mother-in-law was a school teacher, and so they loved going over and spending Mondays with grandma. And all of my kids are great bakers because of that. So.
And Mr. Walsh, Superintendent Walsh, did you say that one of your elementary schools has an on-site childcare?
Yeah, inside, yeah. We have 200 students on a Monday, but 130 every day, all year long. So,
And follow-up, Representative Weiss?
And do people then pay for that?
they
Mr.
do.
Walsh, thank you.
Thank you. Or-
Do you have another question, Representative Weiss?
I just wanted to make another comment, if it's okay. Yeah, I feel like my household, I feel like we wouldn't be capable of that. Like, it's not the skill set we bring to parenting. And I think we're on like one end of the spectrum of that, not having that skill set, and that we're both like really busy. And then I think there are a lot of people who just don't have the bandwidth because they're working multiple jobs and they don't necessarily have the education and the structure to their home. So that's just kind of where my concern is. It sounds like some households can make it work. I would struggle.
Representative Hill?
Thank you, Chair Breyer. A quick question about other contracts. How has this impacted your hourly employees' contracts?
And who? Mr. Walsh?
Right now, we have 34 paraprofessionals, and we have like 8 bus drivers and 8 cooks. So if we're talking about them, I would say if this is your primary job, it is difficult to find employees. Because to be honest with you, when you're saving money off somebody's back. And for us, like, it's instead of a 32-hour-a-week job and a paraprofessional for 36 weeks, it's a 28-hour-a-week job for 36 weeks. So theoretically, those folks are losing 144 hours a year, and they probably average a wage of $16 to $18 an hour. When we're looking for those employees, I don't think money is the factor of why they're working for us in the first place, because it would be hard to support a family on the money that you make as a paraprofessional.
Follow-up, Representative Hill.
No, I appreciate that, and I think that's part of what I'm getting at. Also, kind of recognizing I was the son of a paraprofessional, and the challenge around her being able to access health benefits in a school district setting, working in that role. Can you talk a little bit about if any of your hourly employees are eligible for health benefits?
Mr. Walsh, please.
Yes, we have half of our non-union employees take our health insurance. Quite honestly, half the people, having health insurance benefits are good. The other half wish we weren't contributing to health benefits at all, and we're just paying them more. It's a really tough dynamic there, because for this half, health insurance is the most important thing, and for this, it's absolutely the last thing that they want. They just want more money.
And has one more follow-up, and thank you for dealing with the rapid fire here. Has it been difficult to find employees? Can you talk a little bit about that? Are you currently looking at vacancies? Is it an ongoing issue, et cetera?
Mr. Walsh.
Paraprofessionals and non-union people, yes, it is very hard. It seems like no matter what we do with a contract, private sector can add dollars to their wages a lot quicker than we can because we have a negotiated contract. It is a very big challenge.
Thank you. And I have Representative Bakeberg next, and we'll come back to you afterwards. Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So thank you, Representative Baker. Won't screw up my own name, but I really appreciate this, and the reason I signed on to the bill is I love the idea of allowing and empowering our local school districts. Yesterday, we heard a bill, and frankly heard the frustration of hearing no from the department. I was at an admin meeting this morning for my school district, and we were talking about just different innovative programs that we're trying to do, and that was the sentiment that was echoed this morning. Just the frustration of, can we do this? Will we be approved? So I love the idea of empowering local districts. Rep. Baker, that's why I was on this. And as I was hearing Mr. Uni, and those are valid points that he brought up about meals, about childcare, about special ed services, about the economic impact on our hourly workers. And as he was talking, I flashed back to during the pandemic when our bus drivers were delivering meals to bus stops so that kids got food. And what probably my highlight professionally certainly wasn't the pandemic, but it was the Sunday that we met and we planned. And we would do things differently today knowing what we know, but we had a group of people in a room. We rolled up our sleeves once we found out that we weren't going to be back in school, and we just figured it out. And that's what these guys have done. In their local districts, they've gotten feedback, and I understand the concerns about childcare and different styles of parenting, but that comes through local communities. And I would guess that you've had an ongoing feedback process with all stakeholders. That's what school districts do. So thank you for that. But one of the things that we were talking about is professional development for the READ Act. And could you guys talk about that Monday? Because, whether it's a Friday or a Monday, could you talk about how you're utilizing that time? Because the constant roadblock that we run into with innovation within school districts is time. It's time for professional development. It's time for our teachers to take a breath and just think. So could you talk about how you're utilizing that time for professional development? And then is that an additional stipend on top of the current contract, or just kind of talk through some of that?
If I may.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair Pryor.
Ms. Lilleberg.
Yeah, so School Board Member Lilleberg from ACGC. In our contract, the days of professional development are built in to their hours. That's part of the negotiated contract that is renewed every 2 years, and that language is hashed out at the local level. Our professional development, that was one of the things that really was breaking my heart from SOD, that was one of the cuts that we made. And you could see it in how the teachers approach their job professionally and their morale. But by making this investment in them one Monday a month, where they're getting those conversations with their peers and that opportunity to dig deep, whether that be into the data as to how they can support their students better and who needs more, who is a leader in the classroom and can maybe do something a little bit different. We analyze that on a regular basis, and I love those conversations because it used to be about, what can we afford right now? As to now, we're dialing it down to the student level and getting each kid where they are and getting them what they need. So in terms of letters training, we're doing it, we look at that and we're like, that's kind of an expensive step for every district to take. And so if we don't qualify for the grant money that's available for those trainings, we're looking at a train the trainer model where we're sending some of our high flying staff, those that want to be innovative and leaders in that material, sending them to the trainings, and then they're coming back and bringing their cohort along with them.
And I believe we have a short question from Representative Erdahl, and then I will go to Chair Joachim.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in addition to what I said before, because of questions regarding the teachers, the staff and teachers of ACGC are very happy with the program. My wife actually worked in it for a time, and I never hear any derogatory comments about 4-day weeks from teachers. Now, what they do say to me over in ACGC is, if you really want to help us, do something about our pensions, but that's another topic.
Another committee. Chair Joachim.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to thank you, Representative Baker, for bringing this forward, and thank folks for coming all the way down here to testify. And I can tell your passion for your schools and your students by your presentation and the innovative ways that you've tried to meet their needs. And I appreciate that because I think we're all in this together. And I don't mean that facetiously. I work as a para during the interim and a substitute teacher, so I get it. I think I also understand too, after talking to our amazing nonpartisan staff, that this was put in place and then quickly changed after to no longer allow new districts to come in to do it. So that was something that was a learning for me because I did not have that knowledge base. We also know that you collected some great data, and there are concerns. I have concerns that our school year is not long enough compared to other first world countries that we're competing with around the country. And I also work with kids that are neurodiverse, that a really longer school day can be tough. But you probably know your population better than I do. I know in some of my districts that would never work. In fact, during COVID, having pod models for our neurodiverse kids actually worked better because they have that shorter, more compressed time. But I do also have some of the same concerns going to the 4-day model just because of the hourly workers and that, we're desperate for daycare, especially in greater Minnesota. But that's not what we're talking about here today, right? It's something that we need to consider moving to that, and sometimes having a partner in those considerations can help folks hear each other or think about other things they might have not have thought of to ask or do before. There's stakeholders that I'm like, oh man, I didn't think about talking to folks about this. What we learned yesterday too was there's a lot of misunderstanding sometimes about whether or not a district can do something, and they can. They're kind of self-censoring themselves from doing it because they're worried about the fallout, or they're just worried about, like, will somebody say no? In this case, the barrier is the fact that the MDE has said no more schools. So what I would like to ask you and Representative Baker, and maybe we can take this offline, would that be something that would be that first step to look at? Because I think because we are, as a legislature, and tasked the administration, and per constitutional requirement at our state, supposed to put together a form of public education for everyone. So there's some requirements in there, especially with federal requirements with special education as well, that if that first step would be, okay, let's think about opening this up to other districts to apply what that look like. I have real heartburn of just like, we're only going to let the local districts do it. Because while you guys were amazing and did innovative, great things, and I have to say thank you for having a child care center in your schools. That's incredible. That's not always going to be the case everywhere. So we also need to be good stewards and make sure all kids are getting what they need to learn. So maybe that's something that can be part of that conversation. Sorry, that was a very long comment with not quite a question, but maybe a question because I saw Representative Baker pull that microphone towards him.
And Representative Baker.
Madam Chair, thank you. And again, Chair Joachim, I agree with everything you said about let's be careful with this. I think, again, you have recognized these school districts and 6 or 7 others in the state have been very successful with it. If it wasn't, they would go back to the 5-day model. I think that would be clearly seen. Actually, a number of years ago, one school did that. They tried it, and it didn't work for them, and they went back. North Branch tried that. What I'm suggesting is it shouldn't just be the decision of the Commissioner of Education. It should be allowed for that. Should we add some components to this to make sure there's a few boxes to check, to make sure you're asking local stakeholders, like has been mentioned? Is there maybe do 10 or 20 school districts a year that may be approved, and there's another, then you wait and see? I just know that we need more than what we have as an option, because this is not a model that will work for everybody. It is clearly not. I think I've heard from northern Minnesota, a school way up in northern Minnesota, have had this way up north. A mom told me last week when she was down here on another issue, they have kept some of the small schools open only because of the 4-day model, because teachers love it and they have no teacher shortages. Now imagine that. I think every teacher Mr. Walsh has is a licensed teacher. Is that what you told me earlier? That's not every school district has that. So teachers are gravitating towards this. They don't make the most money, but it's about a quality of life. And I think that's part of the issue. But I am very open to helping write amendments or changes in this kind of thing. I'm very open to not letting this just die for a year so we don't have more time to kind of do more. I'd love to sit down and talk with you more, with others, Representative Ukiam, for whatever this looks like as we go forward.
Thank you. And yes, Representative Ukiam.
Just want to make sure for the public record that all teachers have to be licensed to be in a school. Just
But
want to get that out there.
I thank you.
And,
Fully licensed.
Yes,
yeah.
thank you. Fully licensed. Thank you.
And then I just also want to say, like, one of the concerns in wanting to keep MDE involved is also that access to education for districts, if it wasn't working for a parent and there's not another school district within 200 miles, what then? Or I do really have big concerns for our kiddos with special needs as well. But like you said, sometimes you have to walk before you run, and I like, if we are going to change this and open it up for more people, that I personally, I would like to still see the Department of Education involved, but that's just my 2 cents. Thanks.
Representative Bennett.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and Representative Bakerberg. You're all of the above. You're called many. No, Representative Baker. Thank you for this. Thank you to your guests for coming down. Very interesting, and I love it. I love it because it involves flexible learning. I love it because it involves innovation. I love it because it involves local control, and you don't shove it down people's throats. You get your community input, your staff, teachers, administrators, everybody, and you do what works best for your community and your students and staff, which is not necessarily the same as for my community and students and staff in my schools. So I just like that, and I thank you for this. And I think as a state, we need to start focusing on where at all possible to stop micromanaging input for our schools, but hold schools accountable for the output. Because when we stop micromanaging input, we're going to get surprises and find out, wow, this is really working well. We could multiply this throughout the state. But if we constantly micromanage, everybody's got to do it the same, which doesn't work for various communities, then we end up with kind of mediocrity. So thank you for this. I think it's a great bill, and I hope it goes forward.
And as a reminder to the committee, we are playing this bill over. Appreciate the hearing today. And Representative Baker, if you can give us a few closing words, we'll move on to our next agenda items.
And thank you for the extra time, Madam Chair and others. This is a lot to kind of absorb. Again, this is a choice for local districts to see if this is right for them or not. We all have election certificates as well, just like our local school districts do, our school board members. And if we don't get it right, we hear about it. And I think that's what's good about this. It's not dictated by the state. It's not all or nothing. We're not a one-size-fits-all. I love this idea of allowing school districts to have this conversation. If they want to do it, they should apply to make sure they're checking some of these things like they have in the past. It has gotten them to do it better, smarter. I think they've listened to the communities, like others have mentioned, very well, so that they don't have it's a 90% approval. We think this is a good idea. So I really hope that we, as state legislators, allow this to happen. Again, I'm committed, Madam Chair, to work with MDE about some of their ideas and concerns, and I was really encouraged to hear that their ideas are opening to this concept as well. I think they are open to this. I think they're genuine when they say that. And I hope that we can continue this, and I'm grateful that after a couple of years, I got a hearing in your committee, so thank you for this, and I look forward to discussing this with anybody. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Representative Baker, for joining us. Thank you very much for joining us here in person and for our remote testimony, too. Really appreciate being able to hear from the superintendent on that. All right, and with that, we have House File 1242 laid over, House File 1242 as amended, laid over for further consideration.